The iPhone 15 and 15 Pro get a new refreshed design, titanium frame, USB-C, finally, a new A17 Pro chip, a 5x telephoto lens on the Pro Max, and an action button. There are a ton of really interesting features. But at the same time, some of the things that Apple continues to do with these phones are really So I flew 8,400 miles to Sydney, Australia for this year's iPhone launch, and I think I picked a really good year to do it because the updates this year are pretty significant, and being able to come here and get the phones a little bit earlier has allowed me a bit more time to compare this and do something that I've never been able to do before. I bought another SIM card to put in the 15 Pro, which let me use the 14 Pro Max and the 15 Pro Max side by side for an entire day. And let me tell you, I think it was a really interesting way to go about this review. I wasn't focused on, I gotta review the phone. It was just a normal day using the new iPhone 15 Pro Max. And before I tell you all about it, we've got a quick word from today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by the Vitcher One iPhone Pack, the perfect companion for your new iPhone. Vitcher One can directly connect to iPhone 15 series and enjoy an immersive virtual screen. Great for watching content, gaming, or for productivity. With the new iPhone 15, you can just plug in directly, but with older iPhones with Lightning, once you connect the HDMI adapter with Lightning to digital AV adapter, use the Spacewalker app to transform your iPhone into a laser pointer so you can navigate, scroll, and make selections. The app creates a virtual workstation with multiple windows and integration with your phone, allowing you to view 360 video and local files. Plus, if you're in a bright background and want to see content more clearly, you can press the mode button to dim the lenses. This is some seriously cool tech that allows you to effortlessly switch to a more content-focused mode. There are also myopia diopters on the frame for easy adjustment for nearsighted users. With Harman audio for sound and 3 degrees of freedom head tracking activated with a triple press of the mode button, you've got full control of your experience. And use streaming apps such as Netflix and Apple TV Plus to experience mobile cinema with the iPhone wherever you go. Check out the link in the description below and use my code to save 10% off your entire order with Vitcher. A big thanks to them for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back into it. So the goal of my day with the 15 and 14 Pro Max was to get some real-world battery and camera comparisons and get to know the new design of the iPhone 15. The regular 15 with that frosted back feels incredible, but the 15 Pro this thing feels more expensive. I don't know how to describe it. It's lighter, it's more comfortable to hold, and it doesn't smudge as easily, especially in this natural titanium. Apple absolutely killed it, but what comes with that design, of course, is USB-C and the new action button, and on the 15 Pro Max here, that 5x telephoto lens. Those three things make a massive difference. The first thing I did yesterday was drive out to a more secluded area of Sydney and take some shots out on the beach. Now, when shooting some video comparisons between the 14 Pro Max and the 15 Pro Max with the ultra-wide and with the main camera, quite frankly, there's not a noticeable difference. Unless you get really nitty-gritty, no normal person is going to notice a difference here. But the 5x telephoto lens is phenomenal. The portraits that you can take with this camera look insane. And maybe it's just the focal length, but I swear the portrait blurring is more accurate than the old 3x zoom lens. So at this point, I'm a couple hours into the day, and I should note that I had left with both phones at about 95% battery. All right, so I last charged the 96% at 11:30. I'm at 80 right now. You used the limit till 80, right?
Yeah, so I charged to 80. You can see it kept me there all night, and then I'm already like halfway through, over halfway through.
You're at 30 now.
And
your screen time is a little higher,
I
think.
woke up 4 hours ago.
Well, you do have a little bit more screen time at like noon.
Yeah, but
I've used 16% and you've used 50%.
that seems like not great.
Yeah.
Last year, we know what happened to the batteries, and they're sort of trying to mitigate it in settings, but I just
It's gonna happen
know.
again.
I don't know.
I really think that they didn't change enough, and it's gonna happen again. The next stop of the day was a lookout point with a fantastic view of Sydney Harbor, which gave me yet another chance to test out the differences in the camera system. Once again, the telephoto shines here. I think 5x 120mm is a great focal length to have, but apart from that, I'm really not noticing a ton of differences in real world situations between the 15 Pro and the 14 Pro. One of the big issues that I had with the 48 megapixel sensor that Apple introduced last year was the minimum focus distance. This is something that bothered a lot of people, but unfortunately it doesn't seem like Apple changed anything this year. I'm still getting that really irritating switch off at a couple of inches where it switches to a cropped in ultra wide sensor, and it doesn't look good. So unfortunately that has not changed. But as with last year, that 48 megapixel sensor produces some absolutely gorgeous ProRes video. So it has definitely been a fun day doing some camera comparisons, battery comparisons. I think I'm down to 63%. Wow. Honestly, the 14 Pro Max and the 15 Pro Max are, they're running neck and neck. This isn't a scientific comparison, obviously. I'm not doing the exact same things on both. I'm hopefully going to get to that later. But in an anecdotal real world test, I really don't see any difference. So at this point, I pulled up the navigation on both devices to really get that battery life a real world test, and we headed downtown to do some grocery shopping. Oh, no way, they got Shapes chicken crimpy. Oh yeah. And after that, we headed down to the city center. This gave me a chance to test out some night video and photos, and I have to say, again, I'm not really noticing that much of a difference in the performance between the 14 Pro Max and the 15 Pro Max. So despite the incremental camera updates that Apple loves to tout every year, in a real world scenario, the 5x lens is the only thing that I'm noticing or appreciating. So at the end of an 8-hour day, my battery test revealed, in an admittedly not scientific real world test, the phones were basically neck and neck. That was a little bit disappointing, if not only for the fact that my 14 Pro Max is a year old and its battery has degraded somewhat. So to continue my battery life testing, this morning when I woke up, I gave it a couple hours with both phones side by side doing the exact same thing. Scrolling through Twitter, scrolling through TikTok. I put on some Apple TV Plus original shows, let that run for like over an hour. And then I recorded some 4K 30 FPS, not ProRes video for like an hour on both phones. So after all of that testing, the 15 Pro Max only has 6% higher battery than the 14 Pro Max. And my 14 Pro Max is at 93% battery health, which is 7% lower than it was. So basically, it's a wash. Completely identical. This is really one of those things that Apple does every year that just gets on my nerves. Everyone complains about battery life. So what do? They add a new camera system. Like, cool. I like that. That's a very useful feature, but please, for the love of God, fix the battery life. And it's not even that big a deal for me with the Pro Max. I don't really have any problems making it through a day on a single charge unless I'm doing a ton of navigation or a ton of FaceTime, and those just munch the battery. But every single person that I know who has a regular Pro, they always complain about the battery life. Please fix the battery life. But don't worry, it's not all doom and gloom. My two favorite things about the 15 Pro are the action button and USB-C. Last night, after filming my teardown review of the 15 versus the 15 Pro, which you should definitely check out if you get a chance, I was importing an hour of 4K ProRes footage from the 15 Pro Max, and it was so much faster than lightning. This feature is definitely long overdue, but that doesn't mean I don't appreciate it. Oh my goodness. It's so much faster to get stuff off of here. And this is, by the way, before I've even had a chance to explore recording log footage onto external hard drives. USB-C is a legitimately pro feature, and Apple is harnessing it very, very well on this phone. And the same I should also say of the action button. People are really finding some clever uses for this thing. Use the action button to unlock your car. Add additional plugins that allow you to have multiple programs depending on the orientation of your phone. Or if you're Ian Zelbo, use it for a tweet button. The action button is brilliant because it's literally just a button and you can program stuff to it. That's it. It's simple, useful, and customizable. What more do you want? So the 15 Pro and Pro Max are lighter than their predecessors. They're more comfortable to hold. They have more useful port interface. They have an additional button. They have a more useful Pro lens if you're getting the Pro Max. And those are pretty good upgrades. I'm very satisfied with that. But there's a couple of things that Apple just can't seem to stop doing that really get on my nerves. One of those is the battery life. The fact that my brand new phone and my 1-year-old phone are anecdotally neck and neck and only 6% different when you standardize the testing, that's just not good enough. And this is the Pro Max, where I can still comfortably get through a day. If you have an iPhone 14 Pro and you were waiting to upgrade because you really wanted better battery life, this is a major disappointment for you, and I don't think it's overreacting to be mad at Apple for continuing to neglect this. And I was also really disappointed when I tore down the iPhone 15 and 15 Pro, because Apple just continues to make these intentional decisions that make these phones harder to repair, harder to access, and harder to live with. And this wasn't something that I was planning on devoting time to in a full-length review, but I feel like, especially with Apple's focus this year on environmental friendly and corporate responsibility, it just hits the taste buds a little bit sour when you open up the phone to find out that in switching to this new port, they're still continuing to solder that port to a very hard to access daughterboard/ribbon cable combo that has a serialized chip that requires Apple's servers to authenticate. It's also frustrating in a year where Apple makes the back glass on the Pro models removable for the first time that they continue to put serialized chips on that as well. I spoke to some Apple repair technicians that expressed immeasurable frustration with the way Apple handles this. What is the point of serializing a piece of glass with copper wire and magnets on it? There is no reason to do that. It just locks people out from repairing their own devices. We're getting to a point where nearly every single component on these phones is serialized and requires Apple's permission to replace. The charger port is serialized, the back glass is serialized, the display is serialized, the Face ID and the dynamic island are serialized. You need Apple's permission and, more importantly, servers to do literally any repair on this phone. Now, these things aren't a big deal now when you're covered under Apple Care and the phone is brand new, or even when the phone is 1, 2, or 3 years old. But beyond that point, it makes repairing these things more expensive and more difficult. Once they are more than a few years old, it simply will not be cost effective for anyone to fix them. And mark my words, we're gonna start seeing the effects of this very, very soon. The iPhone X is the first iPhone that has Face ID. And if you replace those Face ID components, you need to connect to Apple servers to authenticate that repair. But once those phones are considered vintage, then Apple will no longer support that feature, which means that Face ID replacement on the iPhone X is going to be impossible. And as the years go on, the iPhone X, XS, the 11, 11 Pro, all of these phones are going to start dropping off, where repairs are going to become more difficult or impossible or require you to remove features and install third-party components. This is going to generate more e-waste and just completely undo all of the work that Apple says it's doing by using, recycled materials or renewable energy. So yes, the iPhone 15 Pro is a really good phone, but I can't help but have this nagging feeling in the back of my mind of like, where are we going with this? These serialized parts, batteries that just don't get any better from year to year, even when we have a new 3nm chip. It just makes me feel a little icky inside. I've found myself in the last couple of years excited by a new phone, of course, but also worried about what is going to happen to this phone when it reaches the end of its life well after I've sold it on eBay in a couple years. I know this is probably not where you thought that this video was going, but that's where it's ended up. So I'm very curious to hear your thoughts in the comments below. And I'm starting to lose daylight, so we better wrap this up. Thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a comment, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.